Hello everybody, I'm Mike, CTO and co-founder at Callstack, and before we move to our React Native Show podcast, I have a quick announcement to say that might be something that is interesting to you. Today I'm looking for the best React Native developers to join my team. Besides working on high-end software used by millions, we also contribute to open source projects such as React Native Paper, React Native Testing Library, or Re.Pack. And so you will have an opportunity to develop your skills and knowledge within these projects, as well as move your own ideas into life by taking part in our R&D program. We are a great team full of React Native crazy people about this technology, and we can't wait to share our knowledge and experience with you. And so if this sounds like something exciting, don't wait anymore and join us. It's great to be part of such a team. Check out the link below and apply, and I'm hoping to see you soon in our Callstack office or maybe remotely depending on your location. Bye bye.
Thank you. I want to welcome you all on our React Native EU meetup, which is going to be a panel. We have a great panelist here, and we'll have a hackathon, which is going to be Hacktoberfest 2021. So why are we here today? We are here at Callstack headquarters, office in Wrocław. Right now you are in the kitchen, so in the kitchen you can have some snacks and beer. In the break between panel and hackathon, we'll have some pizza for you. People with the sign like this, Callstack team, are from Callstack, so you can ask them wherever you want, and they will help you with hackathon as well. We, Callstack, we are a consultancy with React and React Native expertise, one of the best in the world. We have great core developers. And also we are huge in the open source community. We develop a lot of open source libraries like Re.Pack from Pavel, React Navigation from Satya. We have a few other ones as well. Also, we are the hosts of React Native EU conference, which was conducted fifth time this year, and it was second time online, but hopefully we'll see each other in person next year. How many of you was on the React Native EU conference or watched our videos? Okay, yeah, that's nice. On today's panel, we'll have a few questions as a follow-up from the conference, and also we'll have a few questions about like React Native in general, technology in general, and stuff like that. And maybe how many of you are work in React Native on the daily basis? Cool. And most of you. That's great. We are looking, we are looking for just people like you. We hire people all the time, so go to our career page. We'll be happy to have you on board. So yeah, that's that. And why are we here today? Because we had this huge conference, we had some questions, we wanted to do a follow-up. Today with us are four panelists, three of which were speakers on the conference, and one was the host of the whole conference and has been a host for 5 times. So yeah, agenda for today is like, first I introduce guests, then we'll have a Q&A panel. You will also get a chance to ask your questions in the end of the panel, so please feel free to do that later. And then we'll have a short break, like a half-a-minute break for a pizza and beer. And then we'll have some Hacktoberfest coding. Cool. So yeah, React Native EU. Let me introduce our guests. Should I start from the end? Yeah.
With the guys with the guitar.
I will start with the guitar guys. Let's welcome on the stage Wojciech Kwiatek, who is a CTO of Channels. He was our speaker. He is also a JavaScript trainer, mentor. Hello. Hello, Wojtek. Good to see you. Next up, we have another guitar guy, Zamotany Paweł Trysła. He is also a React Native EU speaker. He is a developer here at Callstack, and he is also a lead engineer in Re.Pack. Next up, Satya. Satya is a core contributor to React Native, and he's also a maintainer of huge library React Navigation. I'm sure many of you used it before, and he's also an engineer here at Callstack. And last but not least, Mike Grabowski, who is the CTO of Callstack. He is a podcaster, developer, contributor. What else? Like, it's great to have you here, and it's great to
Thank you.
have
Pleasure
you all.
to be here in this office.
Cool. So right now we'll start questions to our great panel. Maybe I'll start by telling you where the questions came from. So I got this question from React Native EU attendees. They asked some questions during the live streaming of the conference on our Discord channel. I got some of these questions from MAA that React Native team conducted yesterday. And some of those questions, it's just my brain, I came up with them. Let's see if you can guess which ones are those. So for our starter question, I want every one of you to answer how did you start programming and how did you start your adventure with React Native? Satya, maybe you can start.
Well, I studied forestry and I wasn't really enjoying it. So I started learning Bash scripting on the side and learning programming. And then I got a job and I had to learn JavaScript to be on a job. And that's how I learned programming. And after that, when React Native launched, we wanted to build a cross-platform app. And we also had React experience. So React Native was a no-brainer. And so we started with React Native development, and that's how I learned it.
I want to just underline very important thought that Satya just had. It's you learn on the job, right? You don't know everything from the scratch. When you start the job, you learn on the job. Paweł, did you learn on the job as well?
Kind of. So I started programming when I was in the middle school. I wanted to do web pages, so I started with HTML and CSS. Then I got into PHP. Then I wanted to do something which is more in terms of native. So the C++ came after that. And I was doing C++ until college when I decided I want to go to work. And one time Callstack reached out to me. So I had to learn React to apply to Callstack. And after applying, they were like, you know what, we are doing React Native, so you should learn React Native. So I did.
Yeah. Is React Native different from React? Remind me, please.
It is.
Okay, cool. Mike?
I actually didn't know that you learned React to apply for the
Yes.
job.
Yes, I learned both React and React Native.
Okay, I remember you commuted from outside. It was like late in
Yeah.
the night, but okay, that's nice.
Did
I'm so happy that
Did he scored high on the interview?
We knew he was great from the
Okay.
beginning, you know. So I started when I was probably in middle school as well, like 14, maybe 15 years old. I'm not sure that's middle school. It's changing these days.
I think that's gymnasium.
And it was very simple motivation. I just wanted to have like some free cash for like daily stuff and hanging out with my friends, not asking my parents every weekend I need money. And you know, I kind of started from this motivation, but then I got addicted so much about it that I just kind of decided to change from being a doctor to being a programmer, and that's how I ended up here in Wrocław. And I was working at a big software house in Wrocław, and then I decided to go to London. and I was asked as a React developer to do a mobile app, and they wanted me to build Android app and iOS app. So I started with iOS because that was easy. And then when I got to Android, I was like, hell no, I'm not touching this shit. And it was just the time when React Native was announced. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not stable, but at least I don't have to deal with Java. And that's why I was one of the very first people to actually ship React Native to production, because I had no other choice.
Like for Android, right?
Yeah.
It started with iOS.
I mean, iOS is nice, and I still do lots of iOS in my free time because I just like the platform.
Do you have a free time?
It's variable, you know, like. But when I do, I do iOS.
When you do have a free time, you code.
Yes, basically.
Great answer. Wojtek.
For me, I started when I went to my studies. So I started at, let's say, I was 21, 22, or something like this. So I started with what we do on studies in IT field. So it was like C, C++. Later on, there was some Java programming, cool stuff. Then I realized that it's not my cup of tea. So it's like I'm not going to stay with the Java or something like this. I started to learn JavaScript because of some project on the university, and then I get my first job. You know, after a few jobs more. So I was asked to decide on what to do with the mobile app. We needed to have a mobile app, and on the market there already been some patterns for let's say cross-platform applications like Cordova, PhoneGap, and then it went to the React Native. So React Native was like 4 years ago. It was pretty stable at that time. So I thought like, yeah, I can do the JavaScript stuff. I know that people who I work with also do the JavaScript stuff. So maybe that's the better option than to hire Android and iOS developers to do two separated apps. So that's how we began.
Actually, this is our next question. Which is, what drove you to invest in React Native years ago? And this is a question to our two CTOs here, because at some point you had to choose, right?
So I mean, we didn't have this choice, because that's what the company is about, right?
Yeah, but you established it, and like Wojtek said, there were some like other frameworks on the market.
So I guess Wojtek partially answered what I'm going to answer, and I guess we're going to have a bit in common in this answer, but the primary reason was the ability to actually ship one application to many platforms with the same sort of language, the same patterns. And I know this is like very popular and common answer everybody says in the internet, but it's actually quite right and quite true. So we wanted to like, I saw sort of a future for this technology. We saw lots of opportunities for React Native. And our motivation was that we wanted to build a business that will support those players that want to take advantage of React Native without being afraid of the fresh technology. So for example, if Wojtek didn't manage to find a great team to build his startup, then we would be in touch 3 years ago. But that's essentially the primary reason, and the ability, like I said, to kind of target actually any platform that you want these days with the same technology.
Yeah, we'll have some questions about that. Wojtek, do you want to add something?
Yes, two things. So the first thing is that the language was JavaScript. So the language that you use for the React Native is pretty common. So it's not something that someone needs to learn. It's like there were developers who did the JavaScript stuff. So that was also one big plus. And the other thing is that the previous generations of this cross-platform things were rather using the web view, so kind of stuff like this, and the React Native went some other way, so it regenerated the native code, so the performance of this app is really on another level comparing to this previous stuff.
I hate feeling like I'm old, but I'm 28 years old, so I let's say I've been programming for 10 years at least, like officially, not as a freelancer. And so I remember the days, maybe you guys also remember, I'm not sure how long you've been coding, the times when, Ionic, Cordova, and these solutions were like popular and everybody was doing all sorts of different stuff on PHP and there was no Node.js even out there. And so I remember people struggling with Cordova and trying to do those web apps in a web view on a mobile. And I was also one of the engineers to work on the fixes. I hated this technology. So when I saw React Native to kind of offer a totally different user experience and developer experience, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be big, you know. But that's been like 6 or 7 years ago.
5 years ago, the development experience wasn't as good as it is today. Like,
it was Node.js 0 point something.
Yeah.
Time flies.
Let's move to the other questions. Thanks for answering. What are the opportunities for React Native going forward? What are you excited about the most? Pavel, do you want to start?
Okay. To probably surprise to no one, I'm most interested in the JSI, and I'm mostly interested in that part since I'm maintaining the Re.Pack, which is heavily focusing on code splitting. So this is interesting for me because I might be able to implement the code splitting in a synchronous way using the JSI. So that's a part that I want to prototype and experiment with. So I'm mostly interested in that aspect.
Cool. I can also add to that. With JSI, like something else is also going to be there. It's called Fabric, which is synchronous updates of the UI. It's not out yet. It will be in future, but I'm really excited about Fabric because when we can do synchronous layout, it's gonna like enable a lot of things that we cannot do today. For example, we can measure the layout synchronously, so that I have had a lot of issues with asynchronous layout measurements, because if I want to render something based on the layout, I need to measure it and then show it. So there will be a blank space, for example, because or a spinner or like loading indicator or something. And we don't have to do those things anymore if we can render synchronously. So yeah, that's a big, and that has been a big problem for me, because when dealing with responsive UI, you need to measure things a lot, and this will solve us finally, which I'm very excited about.
Do you have, guys, any other answer than new architecture, or should we move forward?
Maybe just one thing. So the developer experience is getting better and better with React Native. So upgrading from one version to another is like a lot of better than it was 2 or 3 years ago. So it's still evolving. So so I believe that this one I'm also excited to see next year's.
Yeah, it's funny because I just had a thought in my brain that I'm gonna say something that is not related to a React Native feature because I'm a CTO. And then you said what I wanted to say, and then I figured we have another CTO on the panel, so you stole my answer. But one thing that I can add on top of it is also related to the developer experience, which is the general stability of the framework. I'm kind of involved in the regular React Native release process, and last year, and 2 years ago and 3 years ago, it was just me, and then somebody else joined, and there's just 2 of us releasing a framework that everybody in the world uses, which sounds like it's ridiculous, but it worked. And now there is like 10 or 15 people from Facebook and Microsoft. They finally took ownership. So I guess something people were complaining about, being Facebook not taking care of the open source part of React Native, is now being addressed. And I feel this is a good signal to like companies all around the world that React Native is maturing. And that's what I feel will help React Native kind of accelerate even more together with those great technical features and DX improvements.
I agree. Thanks for answering. So yeah, this is a funny one because now you have to admit if you have seen the whole React Native EU conference, and what was your favorite topic?
Wojtek, was
I'll
it yours?
No.
So we have
I didn't see
3
the whole
speakers here.
conference, but yeah, I see a major part of it. But there were two topics. I don't remember the talks, but I'm always interested in animation stuff because that's what I lack for as I have a lack of experience in this as the developer, I would say. So that's this talks about the animation was the one part, and the other I can remember was about the hacking. React Native, so how to secure your apps in React Native. So this one was pretty cool. So, yeah.
I haven't watched my own talk, but
Yeah.
I watched this talk about JSI and React Native Vision Camera by Mark, and it was very interesting because it talks about like how he implemented the camera and how you learn some things about JSI, which is the upcoming architecture, and yeah, it was very interesting talk to see.
You don't want to answer? Yeah. Let's just move on.
You can say Re.Pack, it's okay.
No, I haven't watched my talk.
I did.
Yeah, I have.
We
That's
see a
great.
pattern, yeah.
It was great. I encourage you all to watch a talk from Pavel about Re.Pack and his like great achievement with it.
No, seriously, want to answer or not?
No, it will be just mostly what Satya told.
So
the
one-
JSI, I haven't watched it, to surprise to no one. And
Yeah, one thing that is worth adding on top of what Satya said regarding that talk is, so everybody is now talking about TurboModules, which is this sort of new implementation of how we're gonna write native modules with the JSI on top of JSI. But in this talk by Mark, he's actually not using TurboModules. He's re-implementing all that himself. So he is essentially writing C++ code directly and talking to the JavaScript engine directly. And the great thing that you should kind of check about this talk is the JSI host object, which is going to be super hard for me to explain right now. But the idea is that you can pass, like traditionally when you have the bridge, when you have a bridge in your app, and you're, for example, downloading images, you need to pass a image data back and forth, and it takes the serialization takes time. So the CPU and memory is being eaten up by that process. And the JSI host object is like C++ pointer. So you are just passing a reference to JavaScript, and you can synchronously access any property, and that property will execute a native getter. Wow. Yeah. So probably doesn't make no sense, but just check out the talk because it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, just to clarify, the pointer is faster than the object.
no, the pointer is
Wait,
faster because you're addressing a point in memory and you're not copying the
Yeah.
data
Yeah, thank
between
you.
the bridge.
Thanks.
Somebody went to the university.
If
And
you
Java.
want to
And
know
I
more
dropped.
about this kind of stuff, Mike will be available in the break to do some socializing. We'll move forward now.
Until he gets drunk.
And,
No, don't repeat that.
so we talked a lot already about the new architecture, and Mike just explained to us what it infers. And yeah, so maybe Satya, you can let us know what it's all about. What's the connection between GSI, TurboModules, and Fabric?
You know, JSI stands for JavaScript interface, which is basically what Mike explained. You can like synchronously access objects between two realms. Right now there is a bridge which serializes everything to JSON, sends it to native. If you wanna access something from JavaScript, you get a JSON object. And it's the same other way. If you wanna access something from native, you get a JSON object. So with JSI, it will be like you can directly access the pointer, and you don't have to serialize anything, so it will be much faster. And TurboModules is basically the API for building modules, native modules on top of this JSI API. And Fabric is also built on top of JSI, but it's more about layout. How are we going to render all of the views, and how it's going to work? Because right now everything is asynchronous. Accessing native APIs, rendering UI, everything is asynchronous. And with Fabric and TurboModules and JSI, we can do things synchronously. And yeah, so that's basically it. JSI is the core, and TurboModules and Fabric are things on top of it.
Thanks. And when was the first time you got those words from Facebook, like GSI, TurboModules, Fabric? 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
A long
Yeah, I think
time
it was
ago.
around 3 years ago. And
You can ask me how many times I've heard it's gonna be implemented in Q3.
Yeah.
It's just like suspense.
I just want to direct
But
you
it's
to
so close, like we've never been that close.
on our YouTube channel, Callstack Engineers, you can find all of those talks from Facebook where they promise that it's going soon. Yeah.
But it is actually out there already, so we are very
Yeah,
close.
That is the question.
Oh,
You might answer that. Do you have a rough idea when the re-architecture rollout will be available for the community? Do you think users will be able to use it while working with React Native 067?
so I don't know. I was on a React Native release meeting. We have meetings every Thursday when we talk about things like this, including what is the plan for 067 and what do we want to include. And there is no discussions around this yet. Facebook just released like 2 months ago or 1 month ago a document where they sort of explore your upgrading journey from the old architecture to new architecture on iOS. They shared it with partner companies like us for early feedback on kind of user adoption. And Android version is still work in progress. So until that happens, I don't think it's gonna happen soon. Probably a few months still to go before we wrap it up and make sure that it's quite easy to upgrade. But it's close.
But you can already access the GSI and
Yeah, you can
play around with it.
already use it. It's just that it's not going to be officially turned on. But if you want, you can go to the RN Tester project, which is the official example of React Native in the repo, and TurboModules are already running there. So it is not officially released, but it's kind of released. I'm more excited about Fabric actually than TurboModules. And I'm not following Fabric updates, so maybe you, Satya, know.
I don't think there are any updates about Fabric
Okay.
yet. So yeah, but I would like to ask something. So TurboModules and Fabric are the re-architecture of the whole thing. They need to be enabled globally, or at least per React View. So one thing is you cannot use TurboModules right now without this document, but you can use part of the API, which is JSI. There are already a lot of modules like React Native Reanimated, React Native MMKV, React Native Vision Camera, and people are also exploring new libraries based on this. So you can already write modules based on JSI, and you can already use them in your app. There are some limitations that you're not going to be able to use Chrome debugger, for example, but you can use Flipper debugger, or if you use Hermes, you can also connect it to Chrome and use the Chrome DevTools that way. But yeah.
I think we forgot about one piece, which is CodeGen.
Yeah, but CodeGen is part of this TurboModules thing that Facebook has. You don't need to use CodeGen if you use JSI. You can. When TurboModules is there, they will have documents, they will have libraries. There is also React Native CodeGen TypeScript. I don't remember the name of this project, but yeah, there is also one for TypeScript. The default CodeGen is basically you write some types in TypeScript or Flow, and this CodeGen will generate C headers based on those types. So you don't have to write these C headers by yourself. And the default official CodeGen script is based on Flow. So you have to use Flow to use CodeGen. But there is also another implementation which uses TypeScript. But yeah, CodeGen is not mandatory for TurboModules or JSI. It's just something you can use.
But it's already in master and already works.
Yeah, it works.
Because we've used it.
There is just no official documentation publicly available.
Yeah.
We have this internal documentation about it.
I mean, without CodeGen, you would have to create at least 5 zip files. So I guess for pretty much majority in this room, including myself, this is going to be rather pain in the ass job to do. So running CodeGen is nice.
Pavel was a C developer, right? So
I was C++. And
That is a difference, man.
I might be wrong, but from my understanding, C headers and C++ headers are the same thing.
okay.
They're just headers.
And now we immediately turn this panel to C and C++ meeting.
Let's move
What's
forward.
next?
Let's talk more about
How do you
React
keep
Native.
a memory?
So our next couple of questions are going to be about platforms and which platforms can we support. So this question is about is to Pavel actually, and it's what is the largest number of platforms you run React Native on in production? So I mean like client application. How much code sharing there is realistically, and what are the drawbacks of maintaining many platforms?
So currently we have a client which is creating a streaming application, and the target for the streaming application for now is 6 platforms all of them are running React Native. And in the future, we have a plan to extend that into 9 to 11 platforms. I'm not entirely sure how exactly it would be. So we have a lot of platforms because with streaming application, you want to be everywhere so that people can use your application. And realistically, because each platform has different APIs, different specifics that you need to account for. For example, even the layout on mobile app is different in a streaming application than on, let's say, your smart TV. You have to account for those differences. So realistically, in this case, I would say about 60% of the code is shared. The rest is either platform specific or like a category of the devices specific, and the rest is just native code because, for example, on Tizen, which is a operating system from Samsung TVs, you have APIs that are specific to the smart TVs, like remote control. And the Tizen is based on NWJS, which is similar to Electron. So the Tizen itself is similar to web, but it has more APIs, so you need to account for that. So there will never be a 100% code reused across all of these platforms.
Well, if you write like Hello World on 19
yes,
platforms.
Yes, but like Hello World is not a production application. I mean,
small off topic around Tizen. I used to have a Samsung watch 4 years ago, and I was so disappointed because of no applications. It was like...
So you wrote one?
I wanted, and then I've learned there is this Tizen OS, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And actually Samsung wanted developers to adapt their platform so much, they created like entry points in all different languages to write the apps. You can use JavaScript or some native language as well. Actually, after looking at it, I was like, this is actually quite a nice platform, but I just don't have time to invest in it. And yeah, just an off topic that React Native is kind of allowing you to support Tizen OS, but still at the same time you could try DJS approach.
They also like paid developers to, like they created some competition?
Technically, if you have good business talk and you can negotiate with people easily, you can get paid to do an application on Tizen. Don't ask me how I know that, but it's technically possible.
But they do it themselves.
We should move forward.
That's right.
This talk is about React Native.
But thanks to this approach, I do have, you know, like Polish VOD streaming apps before Android TV and Apple TV have them, because they just did it themselves.
Something else about platforms, or should we
Can we run React Native on Samsung Smart Fridge?
Smart fridge?
Yes. It's also
like,
Tizen, right?
I can imagine a streaming platform on my fridge.
Do you know what are the resources available?
It's
like
probably
what
Tizen.
CPU, what RAM?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah,
we might be resources
I will
bound.
just change slide and we will move on. So, about the topic about the watches.
Moving around this dangerous area.
Yeah. We'll
Is
be
the
real
next
quick
slide about the
this
fridge?
What are your thoughts on React Native support for wearOS or any wearables in general? And what do you believe are the limitations for this implementation?
So for this one, I guess the best answer for this question is to ask you a question. How many of you have a wearable right now? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Actually, quite a lot.
But still, that's the answer. It's like just a small percentage. Like nobody from us has.
Yeah,
I mean, I had, but I broke it.
It's a hybrid watch.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Okay, we're talking wearOS.
This is a wearable.
This is wearable too, right?
It measures my stress right now.
So, more serious answer is that creating a new platform for React Native is a huge investment, and usually happens when there is a huge business like Microsoft or Facebook behind it, or what is the name of this company?
Samsung?
No, they did it for Linux.
Ubuntu? Canonical?
Yeah, Canonical, for example, did the React Native Linux, which I'm not sure if it's still a thing, but there has to be somebody with a real business interest to invest resources to create it. And now nobody is right now targeting wearables with React Native to make a business case for it. And that's why Microsoft or Facebook and other businesses are doing it. So unless there is a huge player in the game to make a platform for it and have a use case for that, I don't think there is gonna happen. We did a React Native, we did a companion app for wearOS for our client, and we actually did it natively with async communication with the React Native host app, and it was actually on Tizen with a bit of JavaScript. So
Okay. So that's that. So I'm curious to know more about building VR AR experiences with React Native. What's the plan for making VR AR constructs exposed to React Native?
Well, I don't have a lot of experience building this VR AR experiences, but there is a library called Vero, which allows us to build VR and AR experiences using React Native. And it exposes a lot of components to do like different things. You can position things, and I have used it once. I have just played with it, but you can use it already. And they have an app on Play Store and App Store. So all you need to write is some JavaScript, and you can scan a QR code, and you'll have an AR and VR app. You don't even need to compile anything. So you can go and check it out. It's very easy to do.
So it's Expo-like.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
one question, but it's about technical side, so it's okay if it's just
Mike,
great.
I don't know how much time we have and how many
No,
questions
but
left.
this one is actually like this is actually quite important question.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I hope it's important.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more than just for me. So is React Native controlling the layout, or is this like just the components API?
It's absolute position. You have to position everything yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, so there is no yoga.
Okay.
I mean, yoga is for flex, and with VR and AR, you have either camera on or 3D models in 3D space. So it's more in terms of using like an OpenGL all metal.
And you have everything around you, so it's not, you cannot like just use Flexbox.
Okay, let's move on. Can I use React navigation in React Native Windows, macOS, etc.? This is actually from our, it was asked during your talk on our Discord channel.
Okay, short answer, yes.
Let's move on. Do you want to elaborate?
Well, you can use React navigation on Windows and macOS with certain limitation that you cannot use gestures, because we mock out the gesture library on those platforms, but everything else will work. Yeah.
With React Native being available on so many platforms, how do you envision the library ecosystem and native code in them, in the libraries? So we have two maintainers of libraries here. So this question is for you, Pavel and Satya.
Would you want to start?
Sure. No, it really depends, because not every developer knows about Windows, and not everyone has Windows to develop on, so supporting Windows can be difficult. But like for popular libraries, Microsoft is sending pull requests now, adding Windows support, for example, and macOS support. So I think like in future, more and more libraries will have Windows and macOS support, but I don't think like every library will have macOS and Windows support like they have for iOS and Android. It's just not feasible, because developing for 2 platforms is one thing, developing for like 4 platforms is like way more difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, without a common API that those libraries could use for all of the platforms, it will be challenging to support everything. So I think there will be always a discrepancy between how well iOS and Android is supported compared to even Windows, which is like the 3rd thing in our list of out of 3 platforms.
There is also web.
It's web also,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, web is 3rd, then it's Windows, yes, you're right.
But I guess it is a kind of a challenge that we are discussing these days. I mean, I have no idea how this is going to look like. I'm not buying the idea of having everything in one place. Like, I know Microsoft is doing contributions themselves. They are also paying businesses and companies to create Windows version of this library, which is very popular because they want adoption. But if I was one of the maintainers, on a Mac running Android and iOS, and somebody would send me a PR for Windows, I would have I would have serious doubts about it from the maintenance perspective. So, and I'm not sure. I know I'm not the only one. So I don't know how it's gonna look like.
You can merge it, but who is gonna maintain it in the future, right?
So one case might be that there will be just a sibling library with compatible API, and we will have to do some changes on the CLI side of things. And the by CLI side of things, I mean the backend that links all the modules for you. When you do npm install, we connect it for you back behind the scenes.
So to sum up,
if the native code has the same API, we don't even need to do that, right?
Yeah. I'm saying that if the native APIs are incompatible and somebody like creates a compatible JavaScript API based on the incompatible native API, then for example something like that. But I would even like to touch the Windows native code. So
yeah, it's tricky, but this question is going to be answered at some point, right?
Yeah,
and we will probably live in somehow. Like the place where some libraries have support for like all of the platforms, and some have like symbolik libraries doing that.
But it's always a trade-off. If you are supporting every platform, and it doesn't even have to be like typical React Native library, it can be any library or framework, you're making a trade-off that you are supporting all of them, but not as good as you could if you have a different implementations for all of them. And a great example of that is a UI engine. With UI engine, you can support a lot of platforms, and they all have shared native code, which is in C++. But what you are giving in that solution is performance and the ease of use.
Are you talking about Flutter?
No, I'm talking about the UI, but
we don't talk about Flutter here.
So we can talk about Qt.
This is a no word here.
So we can talk about Qt, which is C++ cross-platform.
This is a React Native panel. Yeah, I'm taking control. Let's move on.
Okay.
What does it take to develop and maintain a big open source library? So I feel we already touched that, but feel free to contribute.
What does it take?
Lots of patience and time, especially you have to, most of the time is not spent on coding, most of the time is spent on triaging issues, because a lot of, when it's popular and it's big, a lot of people are using it, a lot of people are opening issues, and you have to go through those issues and like see like what's actually valid, because a lot of issues are not valid. It's usually a question. Like around like 80% of issues are usually not valid, you know. So yeah, you have to be patient and you have to spend more time on issues than coding. Yes, that's what it takes.
Yes, I cannot say what does it take to maintain a big open source library. I can only speak for perspective of smaller and mid-size open source libraries, but I second that it takes a lot of patience and especially time. And based on my experience, a lot of the issues that are being opened have either missing informations, or someone didn't read fully the documentation, or they didn't read the documentation at all. So there is a lot of like this housekeeping chores that you have to do in a open source library. And so if I were to assign percentage of how much time I spend reading issues, figuring out, okay, I know this, I don't know that, I need to provide some message and write some message, ask about the details because they are missing, is like I do 10% of coding, the rest is just housekeeping.
Yeah. You know, with the number of issues, Pavel can ask for issues manually. I have to automate all of those because I cannot go through 900 issues and ask for every
With React Native, they do like regular just closing due to inactivity.
Yeah. I mean, I also have a bot which closes these issues due to inactivity, but like there are certain conditions, like if there is no repro provided or there is no version numbers provided. Like, yeah, if the user didn't spend any effort on the issue, we close it after a month, which I think is a reasonable time to give to provide a repro, you know.
And the funny thing is that when you look at the NPM registry, for example, and you like browse the libraries by the popularity. There are some modules that are downloaded hundreds of millions of times per day, maintained by a single person, which sounds crazy, but imagine the pressure this guy can have. And,
Or girl.
Yeah. I mean, they can have, exactly. So it's just huge. I can't imagine this, and thankfully, I've never been into any kind of GitHub drama before, but maybe you have followed just out of curiosity, you know, those Twitter dramas about like somebody sending PR without crediting somebody else. Like recently there was this thing about something, the PR to Babel about removing something. They were arguing about some forking. I don't
There was
even know
this
what was
library
going on,
about
but-
colors.
Yeah, the colors.
To sum up,
crazy.
maintaining open source library, a lot of chores, a lot of work, and a lot of drama.
And lots of fame when
Any
it's
satisfaction?
growing. And you have the fame.
Well, you see people you see people use your code. You see that it helps people do things which they wouldn't have been able to do before, or like would have taken a lot of effort, and it makes you happy. You know?
Okay,
And
cool.
you can grow, which is great because sometimes when you're like, I don't know, maybe let's say I'm working in PHP and I want to learn Rust. And there is no way I'm gonna do Rust at my job because I'm also a junior. I don't want to change my job to Rust. I can just
Who's gonna
contribute.
hire you with like no Rust
But if you
skills?
make some contributions, then it's a different story.
So today we'll have an opportunity to open some pull requests to some open source repositories, so you can also be
So maybe we should have said, maybe we
you
should
can
have,
also be depressed open source maintainer.
maybe we should have answered this from a different perspective because it sounds like it's all like tiresome, boring, and chore. But there is actually, you know, like lots of people here at Callstack that you can see with this badge are doing open source, and they can tell you some interesting stories. Some of them are nice, some of them are less nice, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a journey. So you're learning something new, and you know, like Pavel and Satya were talking about issues. So your learning management helps you work better with a client on a project.
But you know, Mike, we're not talking about open source libraries. We're talking about big open source libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You learn anger management.
So we are talking, yes. So we are talking the foundations, the point when you set up foundation.
Yeah, let's move forward. This one is for Pavel. Pavel is a maintainer and creator of Re.Pack. So Pavel,
What is Re.Pack maybe first?
yeah, maybe you can
Okay.
say a few words about Re.Pack.
There is a short answer and a very long
Remember, it's
answer.
his big open source library, so he has
We
those
still
feelings.
have to do some like hackathon in the evening, so be short.
Okay, so Re.Pack is a API, more specifically a set of plugins for Webpack to use Webpack to bundle your React Native application. That's the shortest answer for it. So
Because
if you
usually you don't use Webpack.
yes, Webpack itself is not compatible with React Native. So if you try to use Webpack in a React Native project to build for React Native, not React Native Web, because that's a different story. For React Native, I can guarantee you that there will be a lot of problems, and so Re.Pack is there to solve those problems. So it's a necessity if you want to use Webpack to model React Native.
And can you use Hermes with it?
Short answer is yes.
Cool. Let's move on.
No. I need to elaborate.
What is Hermes?
No, but this question is a bit odd because Hermes, as we all know, is a JavaScript engine to run your JavaScript. And the JavaScript that it runs is created by a bundler. It can be Metro or Webpack. This is all known facts, so I'm not inventing anything new with here. But the bundle that Webpack or Metro is generating is based on source code that we all write and dependencies that we all use and the configuration that we provide to the bundler. So whether your bundle and by extension your code works in Hermes depends solely on what you are using in your code and how you are configuring the bundler. Re.Pack is not a bundler. It's an API for the bundler. So Re.Pack doesn't do anything specific to prevent or allow you to use Hermes. That's the short answer. That's the long. No. I mean, I could spend like probably an hour discussing that, but
If you are interested in this topic, Pavel will be surely organizing a follow-up meetup specifically about Re.Pack.
Make
You
sure-
promised me this,
Yeah.
so
Make sure you clear your calendar for the whole evening.
and the day after.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Wojtek, you said that talk about animations was your favorite on the React Native EU conference, so maybe you can answer this one. Should Reanimated library be brought into React Native Core? It seems to be de facto the standard when it comes to creating animations.
I'm not sure if that's the reason or the reasonable for the React itself, or the React Native itself, because as far as I know, the idea is that the React Native should be quite lean in case of quite separated from the library.
But we still have the animated API inside React Native.
Yes, maybe some parts of it. I would believe that it will be extended in some way, but not sure if that should be brought into with all of this stuff. That's also a part of the React itself. So it's just a small library that allows you to put different things on top of that. So I believe that it should still be the same, right? So the React Native should be.
Mike wants to add something.
Yes, because you wanted to trick him by asking what about animated API,
Yeah.
and I can trick you now. That
I'm not on the
like
panel.
Wojtek is right about the lean core.
Yeah.
So the lean core, and I recently feel so weird that like time is running so fast that now like React Native has been around for 6 years. There are people that are learning React Native right now. Maybe you just started, that may not even know what lean core is, which is something that some of us can take for granted because we were around the time.
Some time ago, WebView was a part of React Native itself.
Yes, and what I'm saying is that there was this effort called lean core to strip unnecessary bloated code out of React Native, like WebView, so it's smaller and we can replace WebView with something else.
async storage was
For
also
example, yes.
a part of it.
And those libraries were taken out, and then people took ownership of them. Some of them are now maintained by Callstack, including the React Native slider and pager view, and there is one by I forgot the name. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is that somebody recently asked, okay, what about lean core? You guys are saying it's over, but there is still 10 modules that were supposed to be removed that you haven't taken out. What is going to happen with them? And one of these were actually the ones that you set. So somebody recently asked what's the status of it, because it looks like after the initial first sweeping, we never did the follow-up iteration. So I would expect there might be a follow-up removal. So if you would like...
Animated.
I don't know if that's going to be animated, but the general conclusion is that if you would like to get involved with React Native open source, when we are taking away something out of React Native, we are looking for maintainers. And it's like very, very easy to claim that you want to maintain it and try maintaining it. And wow, immediately you are one of the React Native community members having one piece of React Native on you. So quite a lot of responsibility. You can test your big open source and answer that question for yourself as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much. What are the React Native Core and Microsoft teams collaborating on these days? Who wants to answer that? What is the role of Microsoft? What is the role of Facebook?
Microsoft is no longer evil company. No, I mean,
well, depends. They have released Windows 11 recently, and it's not a good experience.
I just got an email today about it.
I've dropped it many years ago.
I'm already at the beta.
So Microsoft and Facebook are working together right now, very closely. They have dozens of groups where they collaborate together. One of them is the React Native Releases group, when there is around 6 people from Facebook and 6 very important people from Microsoft. When they talk,
you.
And me, and sometimes Mike P from Callstack as well, sitting over there, joining as just Callstack. So the third big business around React Native. And essentially Facebook and Microsoft are working together to make React Native more stable and more sustainable. And it's quite interesting sometimes to watch these discussions because every company is pursuing their own priorities, and Microsoft is pushing Facebook to adapt some less opinionated tools like why do you use Flow for CodeGen instead of TypeScript, trying to kind of make the release more stable because they are releasing React Native Windows after React Native is released, and it's a lot of hassle for them to stay in sync. And Facebook wants to keep everybody happy with this, and they are also kind of releasing some stuff. So long story short is that they are working together on making React Native more stable. But again, these are like huge enterprises, so everybody is doing something on their own that we don't know about anyway. So.
Okay, so Microsoft is pushing Facebook to be more
open,
regular with their releases.
For example, like this is a great example. When Pavel released Re.Pack, which is Webpack for React Native, a set of APIs to make Webpack compatible for React Native. Microsoft was very happy because they are also using Webpack, and so they are helping us and they are helping me to, for example, make the React Native CLI, so the command lines, the React Native start, run iOS, and all those commands, Metro agnostic. So we can move Metro outside of the repo and, for example, make it easy for Re.Pack to join. We did this last year or 2 years ago with stripping out iOS and Android code out of the CLI, enabling Windows code to work. So there is quite a lot of these things to happen. So they are actually asking and helping Facebook make things more open so that we can choose the tools we want to use with React Native.
Great. That's a great answer. Thanks. As a React Native expert, so would you recommend using UI frameworks like React Native Paper to build scalable and maintainable app rather than building the UI from scratch, and why?
Well, I can answer. You have to evaluate the library, whether your design matches what the library has and if it will work for you. If it does, there is no reason to rebuild it, and if it doesn't, there is no reason to force it. It all depends on your requirement. Evaluate the library, evaluate your designs, and see if you can use it. Yeah, that's my answer.
Sometimes you just don't have a choice. You have branding, and you have designers that require you to create a branded versions of UI components. So you just strictly cannot use different UI frameworks, and you have to build it from scratch.
But you can always get inspiration from these libraries on how they do things, so you can build your own internal component library. So yeah.
Yeah, that is actually a great point.
Yeah, I would say that yes, if you have the designer that has their own vision, you probably will end up with doing something custom. But also bear in mind that you sometimes can customize some libraries. So if this design doesn't go away that far, so you can maybe customize the library and have some other cool features from the library. But there's this line that you should say that, okay, this is so customized that maybe we should drop and we should start using our own custom components. So this is usually just one by one, project by project to be.
I think we have still many questions.
One thing to add: there is actually a React Native Paper team in this room, including the lead engineer of React Native Paper standing back there. So our camera will not turn that far to show him, but will it? Oh yeah, he's over there. Woo! So my idea was that he could answer this question, but then it would be opinionated answer, right? But yeah, use it, it's cool.
Sure. I think we still have a lot of questions in the presentation, but I just want to ask.
It's never ending.
I think we can ask the room if you maybe have some questions you want to ask. So that is a good time, and then we'll move forward with the questions that I prepared. Oh, come on.
You told them we have a lot, so they are afraid. It's going to run longer and longer.
For one
How
more.
many slides are left?
Yeah, so there is this popular thing in Poland, so everybody asks you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I'd like to ask, where do you guys see the React Native in 5 years? Because I've heard that Airbnb dumped React Native, and I was just wondering if it's stable.
So let me just repeat the question so we have that on audio track.
And you actually have it in your mysterious magical presentation.
Yeah, but this is a question from the public, and it's worth much more than my question. So where do you see React Native in 5 years, and why did Airbnb dropped it?
You know, Airbnb is just one company. I mean, there is one company dropped it, and a lot of other companies adopted it, like Coinbase, for example, which is also a big company, and Microsoft is adopting React Native. So Airbnb dropped it because they had a lot of native developers who didn't like working with JavaScript, who didn't like dealing with all of the brownfield stuff, I mean, combining native and JavaScript. So it didn't work for them, but it could work for a lot of other companies. Facebook is also a very big company. They are using React Native in the Facebook app. So yeah, they also use it in Instagram app. And yeah, so Instagram isn't fully React Native, but it uses React Native, same for the Facebook app. So yeah, they are using it everywhere, and
Like
I don't see it going anywhere.
Messenger for macOS and Windows is based on React Native macOS and Windows.
Yes, and it used to be ReasonML, which is also nice.
It feels like a web view. I have no
But
idea.
one more thing, I'm not sure if they actually released it, so this could have been sort
I've
of...
heard it on our conference last month.
Okay, so it's public, okay,
Yeah.
because I thought it's not. Anyway, to answer this question also, I was recently chatting with people from Facebook around, like, you know, what should we do as a community, and we were talking about the Airbnb case, that it was very popular, and everybody knows about the Airbnb case. Like, it's so popular, everybody knows about it.
That was the first big company, I
Yes,
guess. Yeah?
and we were thinking, actually the first one was Groupon, that nobody knows about, and they dropped out of React completely because of political stuff, so please cut this one out of the video, thank you. Anyway, back to the point. We had this idea that maybe there should be a follow-up article describing like what Airbnb would do now, because the framework changed so much and it's gonna change in the future. So we feel like there should be a follow-up explaining that maybe today they would not repeat the same mistakes they did and make the same decision. Partially due to the new architecture, which is bringing lots of optimizations, and something about Fabric that we didn't talk about is ability to orchestrate updates and prioritization of certain UI updates, but also Airbnb, like Satya said, they had lots of native developers, they had native integrations, and they suffered quite a lot from lots of different brownfield integrations. React Native was not catching up with native, it was looking different, they had problems integrating it, and these days we have lots of modern solutions for integrating React Native with native. One of them is our own library, humble brag. So we can also try it. But the point is that I wouldn't treat this case as something that is valid, something historically interesting, maybe to learn from their mistakes, but definitely React Native is in a wholly different position these days. So.
And maybe one thing that I can add is that they created and maintained the React Native maps. And actually, React Native Maps is looking for maintainers, so you can join as a maintainers after the Airbnb.
One more thing. Did you know that PlayStation 5 UI is built in React Native, as well as the PlayStation app?
PlayStation 4 was also using React Native.
Yeah.
I didn't know
Some
that.
of the UI.
So we make better decisions than Airbnb, and let's yeah.
There's lots of hidden players in the game, and like we can't even tell you all the great businesses that we work with, that you interact with every day because of NDAs, which I'm really sorry about. But like Pavel said, he's working on a streaming application, which is one of the biggest streaming apps in the world, and it's not Netflix, by the way, it's not. But I think they might be even using it anyway. So it's like you guys interact with React Native on your daily basis. It's just that you don't know it, which actually shows the point that React Native is ready for production. Because if you can't sell it, then it works.
I mean, the case with Airbnb is very specific because Airbnb was a very frequent contributor in open source, so everyone knew that they were using React Native, and there are a plethora of companies that are using React Native, but they are not contributing to open source, and the development happens behind closed doors, and we don't know them.
Yes, and the plot twist here, sorry, one more thing, is that one of the lead engineers at Airbnb back in the day, working on React Native called Leland. He, I guess, quit Airbnb.
He was on Jetpack
and
Compose.
he worked, and he's one of the creators of Jetpack Compose, which is like the new way to build Android apps, which is more like React. So as you can see, he's kind of stayed true to his beliefs still after Airbnb dropping out.
I think Airbnb is still a hot topic for you guys.
Yes,
So,
please,
yeah.
one more thing.
No,
I promise,
no.
but this is the cool one. It's not about code. We actually were to Airbnb office 5 years ago or 4 years ago with Anna, who's the CEO at
Yeah.
Callstack.
She's here.
She's here
You
behind
can talk with her.
And so, yeah, you can ask her how was it like to go with me on a business trip. She hates it.
How much
Anyway,
you hate Airbnb?
Anyway, stop it. We don't have time.
Yeah.
The cool thing about Airbnb office, it was the coolest place I've ever seen. Every conference room and every room in the office was themed by a listing from their website. So if there was imagine you posted your house to Airbnb, and they would just take the photos and make your house into one of the conference rooms. So like all the furniture was
Yeah, I wish they
restored.
did
It looked like the picture, and it was the even the listing of your house on there, showing like what is the inspiration from. It was like,
It's a great idea. So they had one great idea with the office and another slightly worse one with dropping
they were
React
not like
Native.
Callstack that connected both, you know.
I think we need to wrap up this panel session. I still have a lot of questions for you guys, so you can just ask them yourselves during the break, and we will have a break now. So those are all the questions that I was going to ask.
Or maybe there is one more from the audience, like the last one.
Yeah, if anyone has any.
Because I think there were like 2 hands before. So.
Really?
I'm not sure you actually answered the question about where React Native is going to be 5 years.
Yeah.
That's a question from Anna.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to answer it.
I'll pass.
You know, I think React Native is going to
The moon.
to the moon. No, I'm serious. You know, like, and I'm repeating this every time I talk with somebody about innovation. So it may, for some of you that work with me more often, it may feel boring already. But there is this life cycle of innovation that shows all the steps that are happening as the technology is growing. And there is a peak at the beginning when every early adopters are adopting technology. Everybody's so excited. Then we are going down when people are starting to drop the technology like Airbnb. People are complaining. People are saying React Native sucks. What about Flutter and all these crazy things? And we are just peaking down, and everybody's thinking what is going to happen with React Native. And now I feel like with the release of React Native new architecture, we are changing the direction. And now we are ready for the prime time finally, with all the major pieces sorted out, with enterprises and lots of big projects coming in. And so I feel like there is lots of opportunities in front of React Native. And because major enterprises are already adopting it, it will stay like, you know, those 50-year-old technologies, because once they adapted it, they are not going anywhere with it. So
50 years old and still no 1.0 version. Always zero something.
I was about to say this thing, because this is a great time to 1.0, right?
That wraps it up. Thank you, guys, for joining me and answering my questions and questions from all other places. Give it a round of applause.